Network is the Motorcycle Action Group's monthly activist newsletter. I'm Colin Brown, and welcome to the MAG Network Readout. Welcome to Network for November of 2025. Now, October has seen some significant progress made by MAG members at a local level. Sadly, it's often the case that these successes are not something that we can do a press release about or can make a big fanfare about because they're not final solutions, they're not the end of a campaign, they're not something that is particularly newsworthy, but they are significant steps forward in what has to be an iterative process where we make small steps towards the final goal of achieving our aims. First of all, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority has been running a consultation over the last 12 months or so about the forthcoming local transport plan for the region. The initial document didn't have much to say about motorcycling. One single mention of motorcycles in the entire document discussing the future of transport, and so the Yorkshire team led by Marcus Holden set to work to put together a detailed response to the consultation process and engage with councillors and officials to see what we could do to get some improvement. Now, it has to be said that the next draft document that's gone out for the final consultation, which has just been released or just gone through the consultation process, there were actually 9 mentions of motorcycling. And it has to be noted that one of the things that is said about motorcycles is that the motorcycle is a convenient, affordable and efficient alternative to cars and vans. Now, don't get me wrong, there is still an awful lot of work to be done on this particular case. The local transport plan hasn't yet been finalised. There's still time for more amendments and more improvements to be made, and the West Yorkshire team is continuing to engage in that process to see what else we can gain from it. But it is a significant step forward, a 9-fold increase in the recognition of motorcycling in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority area. That's not something to be sniffed at. So the next example we've got is Wirral Mag. They've been pushing for access to bus lanes in the Wirral. Now, as you can imagine, the number of bus lanes in the Wirral isn't enormous. I believe there's just a mere 0.7 miles of bus lane. But of course, in this process, what we have to understand is that Wirral is part of the Liverpool City Region Authority, one of 6 councils that form that regional group. And as a result of Wirral Mag pushing for the bus lane access in the Wirral, we're now in a position where we're on the verge of getting bus lane access for the entire Liverpool City region, and that accounts to 50 miles of bus lanes roughly. So this is an enormous win potentially.
Subject to approval by the Combined Authority, all 6 local authorities in the Liverpool City region will be requested to adopt the policy and practice.
The recommendation has been made by an official in a report to the Liverpool City Region Authority, and that is something that is going to be voted on and the final decision made sometime in December. Of course, what we have to then remember is that although that is a blanket policy from the LCRA, that doesn't mean that the 6 councils have to comply. So they will be requested to follow that policy, but it will then mean that we will have to no doubt get involved in making sure that these councils do actually deliver the policy. Because it's one thing getting a policy in place, it's an entirely different thing to get that policy actually delivered on the ground. So once again, this is an enormous step forward for the Motorcycles in Bus Lanes campaign, but it is something that is an ongoing process, but it is something that we should recognise, and all thanks should go to Dave Pearson and others in the Wirral region who have made this happen. In October, I also attended the Highways UK show at the NEC in Birmingham, and this is billed as a showcase for innovation and cutting-edge technology, materials and management and policy to keep wheeled traffic moving on the roads in the UK. So you'd expect there to be some coverage or some recognition of motorcycles, but sadly not. I travelled to the event on my motorcycle, and official information from the show organisers confirmed to me that I was one of only 5 motorcycles that attended the show against 4,853 cars. So in a show that promotes innovation and technology and the future of transport, you can see that motorcycling is already underrepresented. So sadly, the Highways UK demonstrated to me yet again that the industry is not really thinking about motorcycles when it discusses transport. And I will be putting out a video in the coming weeks looking more closely at the Highways UK show and giving my thoughts on it. But having said all that, attendance there is useful. It does allow me to do the networking, to have conversations face-to-face with people that you may only be communicating with by email otherwise. So I met representatives of National Highways, I met representatives of the Office of Rail and Road, who is the regulator for National Highways. I met people from Transport Focus, which again is the independent body representing road users. Road Surface Treatments Association, the Transport Research Laboratory, just to name a few. These are the kind of people that I was talking to at the show, and there will be things that come out of those conversations which I'll be following up during the course of November. At the show, there was a speech given by Simon Lightwood. Now, Simon Lightwood is actually responsible for delivering the Integrated National Transport Strategy. So you'd expect that in his speech he would have been discussing this forthcoming, imminently to be announced, allegedly, policy. But no, there wasn't a word of mention of this at all. So once again, it was a little bit frustrating. I did attempt to get to speak directly to him at the show, but unfortunately his minders and security staff were having none of it, wouldn't let me anywhere near the guy, so I wasn't able to ask the simple questions of him. A little bit frustrating. So I've renewed my applications to 3 of the ministers in the DFT, so that's Simon Lightwood for the Integrated National Transport Strategy, Lillian Greenwood for the Road Safety Strategy, and Keir Mather for the decarbonisation of transport, and what the plans are around that. So I've submitted my request for meetings with all 3 of these ministers. Are they going to listen to us, or are they just going to continue to ignore us? That is the question we will see the answer to in the coming months. I did have the meeting with 𝙉𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 that did happen in October, but my meeting with Marcus Campbell-Savers has been actually postponed. That's now going to be taking place later in November. But the meeting with 𝙉𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬, that was the one I wasn't too sure exactly where it was going to go. He'd asked some parliamentary questions around CBTs and licensing and criminal behaviour. He's an MP for the Isle of Wight. But of course what I've discovered is that he has also been appointed as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Shadow Transport team. So obviously this was going to be a keen point of interest for me. But sadly he seemed to be more intent on telling me just how junior a role that is and how little influence it actually has. So not too sure that was a particularly productive meeting, but hopefully I'll be pushing with the Conservative opposition to get some real scrutiny of the Integrated National Transport Strategy if and when it actually does occur. So forthcoming opportunities for November, obviously as I've mentioned, I've got the meeting with Marcus Campbell-Savers. Before this edition of Network goes out now, actually this is the day before I've recorded this video. I'm recording this video on Tuesday the 28th of October. So yesterday in my world I actually supported Martin Boyd in Northern Ireland with a meeting for the with the DFI discussing their climate action plan and the role that motorcycles can play within any plan to decarbonise the transport system. So hopefully the points we made in that were recognised and hit home, but we will again have to wait and see what the outcome of that is. But future meetings I'll be having this month, I'll be talking to Worcestershire County Council about bus lane access. I've got a meeting of the Road Safety Panel Comms Working Group. I will also be doing a follow-up meeting with Transport Research Laboratory following discussions that I had with them at Highways UK show. Needless to say, the big one coming up in November is Motorcycle Live. As you may or may not be aware, MAG will not be running a stand at the show this year again. The cost of putting on these stands is exorbitant, frankly. We have to be carefully managing how we spend what limited funds we do have. But I will be attending, dipping my toe in the waters, running around with a camera and doing some video work, hopefully. So if you are attending the Motorcycle Live and you spot me running around with a camera, do stop and say hello. also during Motorcycle Live Week, we've got the Motorcycle Crime Reduction Group meeting. That'll be on the Thursday morning. There we go. That's Network for this month. Keep chipping away. Always remember that you never know which letter it is or which meeting it was that actually leads to a result. So whilst it may seem frustrating to keep making these small steps that you can't really point at to say this was the point where everything changed, what you've got to remember is that one letter that you don't send, or the email that you don't send, or the meeting that you don't attend, that could be the one that makes a difference. So it is important to keep at it. Look forward to speaking to you again in December.